YouTube. It's Devin Coates. Thanks for tuning into the channel. Coming at you with another book review. Susan Pinker, The Sexual Paradox. I've read this actually a while ago, so I'm doing a lot of this off of memory. But I was just scrolling through my library and just remember this was a book I read that I really liked, and just figured I would throw it up. I really don't put up books that I don't like, but maybe I'll start when I start reading more shitty books. But it's The Sexual Paradox, and it's men, women, and the real gender gap. And this book just really does a good job of explaining something. And this is like something I've been going through just on my own personal. I'm big into like philosophy, and I create my own philosophies and theories about things. I really view myself as like an amateur scientist, so to speak. Like my life is the science, and I try to figure out what's going around me. But what this book is primarily about, and it's written by a woman, is it kind of addresses um, the social the feminist movement, but it kind of addresses how the different waves of the feminist movement are making I guess it was like unthought of and unplanned consequences. Like I completely agree with women's rights, and things needed to change from the way that they were several decades ago, and a lot of it's changed. But what it has done is the feminist movement has actually convinced our society that men and women are basically the same. That's like the basic premise is everybody's equal, men and women are equal. But this book really talks about how psychologically, and she's a psychologist, or actually from her evidence, they're not. And there's certain things that were assumed to be social pressures and social things that have put women in certain places and men in certain places. And from her research over a lot of the effects of the second and third waves of the feminist movement, it's actually untrue, and it's caused one, men to feel inadequate, and then two, women to feel like they have to be someone who they're not, and they go down a road, and then later down the line they realize that certain things that might be thought of as a stereotypical woman role that I was trying to fight was just, it's my biology, and that's really what I wanted to do. So I'll just kind of like explain some of their thoughts and just kind of go through. I'm gonna open up the contents and just kind of go through some of the chapters and just explain what I really remember and what really resonated with me. One is are males the more fragile sex? There's dyslexic boys who make good, Revenge of the Nerds, competition is it a guy's thing, and ADHD, men with ADHD who succeed. So I'll kind of combine all those and just explain on the male side, and I'll move to the female side. So immediately, and I'll do this one preface before about both. So when she did do the research, she had a lot of participants, and she asked if she could use their names, titles, who they were, and everything. One thing that she found consistently was all of the men that she studied, and usually there were longitudinal studies. So like she'd have a dyslexic boy. She was their psychologist when they're like 13, and then she follows up with them back when they're adults and sees what happens. So basically, all the men that she interviewed all wanted their names to be put in, and their titles and their accomplishments. They wanted that in the book. All the women did not want their true identities to be shown. And this is one of those ways of her trying to prove that there's certain biological aspects to this. So on the men, what I was saying, basically, she describes the fact that men are a sex that are far more easily susceptible to like sickness and things. But the big thing she talks about is ADHD, dyslexia, and autism run in the male sex are extremely more prevalent. It's very rare to see these things. And autism as in Asperger's. I don't know if she was talking about all forms of autism. But they're extremely more prevalent in the male sex than the female sex. They're rare in the female sex. So basically, what this does is that a lot of schooling is completely not catered to these problems. So if you're autistic, you're terrible. You're not very good socially. So being socially awkward is kind of a male tendency. And a big thing also when I'm talking about all this, she says that extreme cases of like where they're diagnosed and put in a box are the extreme cases of males. But she's trying to make the claim that in the population of males or females, when I get to that section, in a whole, um, they will have these slight tendencies. Even if, like, for example, for me, I might not be. I mean, ADHD. I definitely think when I was younger, a doctor could have easily diagnosed me with that. But like autism or dyslexia and having those kind of mental issues, I might not ever be classified and put in a box of having that. But being a man, you're more likely to have those tendencies than a woman, is what she's kind of saying. But basically, they're a lot more prevalent. And then when you go to school, and I know this was my personal experience, especially more on the ADHD side, I was extremely hyper. I called out all the time, always fooled around. And then if I finished my schoolwork, I was a problem in a lot of teachers' eyes. And then she explains that a lot of teachers are women. So when I get to the women, it's going to make more sense. They don't understand the male brain. And basically, males are not as suited for a classroom setting and learning in that way. So basically, a lot of the time, you're gonna have, as a dude, you will have these problems where you might look back at your schooling history and you didn't really like school, and a lot of successful people were not didn't like school and dropped out of school. People with ADHD, they didn't have a lot of the success in school, and teachers condemned them, said you're too wild, you need to turn it down, turn it down, turn it down. But when they did mature, and that's what she also explains, that males mature at a little bit of a later, they get this singular focus ability, um, in towards their to mid 20s, more to the 30s, they have get a singular focus with which allows them to work extremely hard hours and become that male, that workaholic kind of guy. And using that type of use those things that were claimed as a problem, in when they do get that singular focus, they can use the ADHD to their advantage and kind of push them and be super motivated. Somebody like, perfect example of what I'm thinking of this is a Grant Cardone, for example. Like, he always talks about everybody was trying to hold him down when he was younger. Now he still has that crazy wild brain that's popping all over the place, but he has a singular focus now on that getting rich to prosper kind of mindset, and he's able to manifest that. So really, the book goes through a lot of those kind of issues and just shows how, um, a lot of times there's a sexual paradox that men are not as good at school. And actually, and then I'll use this as my transition, um, and with the autistic aspect, and I could think of like Owen from RSD would be a perfect example of this for me. It's like he talks about like kind of the revenge of the nerds, and basically a lot of people that had really bad social skills, when they do gain that singular focus and ability to just focus in as they move through their 20s, a lot of people that have a lot of social disorders like that, like an Asperger's, what they have to actually do is they can learn how to act. And it's like they peak more into their late 20s to 30s and become super successful because they learn how to act. It wasn't natural to learn how to be social and deal with these social settings. And what she explains is that when you go to school, generally the whole school concept is built. It's actually a lot more conducive for women, and that your teachers are generally women, so they understand how a woman's brain works more. They don't really get the hyper energy of a man. And actually, what she's talking about with this post feminist movement is actually hindering women, because when they do assess grades and things of that sort, women actually, on average, score higher on like SATs, higher grades in school. They're better at cooperation, and she explains that, when with her the clients that she's had and through her experience and her research, like women are just generally, whether it be social pressures, but her big thing is that she's trying to push that it doesn't seem like this is all social pressures, that women are actually just better socially. Their brain is a better equipped and programmed for social situations. So when they are in school, it's easier for them to listen to directions, comply, understand that, like, the reciprocation process and how to follow things, and that communication that men don't really have that ability early on like women do. And in the case for college, when I was talking about the hindering, it's actually like she was talking about some all boys school that with the post feminist woman movement, they had to have women come in that they actually have to delete more qualified women candidates than their male counterparts because feminism's saying everything has to be so equal, and they're pushing that if they pull all the guys out, people are going to say like it's that reverse feminist kind of thing because you're saying everything has to be equal. Then it has to have guys, it has to have girls. And she was explaining that school, if they went just strictly off grades and everything, that it would be an all girls school pretty much. But in a lot of schools, this is happening where basically males that aren't doing as well get picked over females because the feminist movement has pushed equality as the standard. So they can't treat the women better than the men because that was the original thing they're trying to break, and it's not just based primarily on merit. And I don't remember exactly how she explained it, but you get into the book. I mean, that's like, it's kind of a tangent. But then when she speaks about the women, if you go back to, so the guys, they all like the credit. They have the singular focus. But when it comes to working those 80-hour shifts, that singular focus that a man gets, a woman almost loses that when they start to hit the maternity stages. And she basically spoke about very, very highly things like engineering. It's like 80 hours a week, hard hours. Women that did it and that were successful, they didn't want their names in it. They achieved very high levels of success, but then they reached a point where they felt like they just didn't want to do this anymore. She would ask about, do you feel like discrimination? They're like, honestly, not generally. I didn't feel really much discrimination at all. And in a lot of cases, she said the discrimination they did feel was actually from other women. And it was because it was one of those things where like a woman superior doesn't want to appear like she's giving a break to another woman because she thinks it's going to be like, I guess, a bad look. And they basically said that they didn't really feel discrimination, and their choices, a lot of times they would quit these high paying jobs to do more social jobs, spend more time at home, and do other things like that. And they would explain when they had a kid, their priorities shifted, and there was something, it was like a biological thing. Nobody told them socially that you have to do this, that. It's something they wanted to do, and some of them even, in her book, it seemed like they expressed almost regret for denying that part of their existence for so long. So it was like they tried to listen to all the dogma and ideas that were being shoved down to them, that they need to, don't let the social pressure push you to want to do this and that. But really it was a biological force that, at least this is what Susan's claiming, was pushing them to want to do these things. So a lot of the time for the women, they drift towards social work and community and things like that, and those seem like stereotypes. And for a long time, they've been pressed as the reason why women do those jobs is because of social conditioning. They don't have the access to these more advanced jobs. Her point is that what it takes to do some of those jobs, that singular focus, working 80 hours, a woman doesn't, maybe can sustain it for the early portion of her life, but as in being a career forever, it's not. It's almost like a choice thing. They don't want to do it when they really are experiencing that lifestyle. And now, actually, a story that was from the book just came to my mind. Speaking to one woman in particular, where she was basically gonna get the promotion she'd been working for her whole life and everything, but then she decided that she didn't want to do this, wanted to spend more time at home, and took a way less paying job. Her boss was like begging her to take the job. You're super qualified. I want you to do it. More money, more power, but more responsibility, more hours. And she just didn't want to do it. She reached a point in her life where she realized that, it's not for me. It's not the life cut out for me. And then she talks about other things like maternity leave and how, and this is kind of like sucks for women, but it's like that maternity leave, a woman will get off for their maternity leave, a man can get the same. And then it was like a woman leaves for maternity leave, she gets healthy. A man leaves for the same thing, for having a baby, he gets a promotion because they'll work on their thesis and just write a new book or something. I think she was talking about professors at that point. But really that's what the book kind of goes over, is just that a lot of these things that you see and that have been told to us to be completely a social conditioning thing, which isn't wrong. I mean, I think that's just the evolution of thought and ideas and theory, that some of it might just be biological. The fact that a lot of guys get in more trouble. Like, I mean, it's always the guys in the back of the room, the bad boys in the back of the room talking shit, making jokes, throwing shit at the teacher. It's not, the stereotype's not a bunch of girls, even though there are girls that aren't great in school, and there's a reason for that. And then there's a reason why it's a stereotype that guys don't really talk as much, like with their friends and communicating. It's because at a younger age, it's more of that physical energy, that hyper energy is how you get along and you do things. And for women, it's more they understand the social aspects, and some of this is biological. Purely, um, it's not purely social conditioning. And it was just very interesting for me to think about, and thinking about my whole lifestyle and how my life has progressed, and times where I was a good kid in terms of intellect, but I used to get in fucking trouble like crazy. I'd always be in detention. I was called rambunctious, class clown, talk too much, disruptive, all the different words. Man, it was like I just couldn't sit in the chair for that long. Like that was the problem. And you don't keep me engaged, it's like my bad, you're fucking boring, dog. But yeah, so it really kind of just shows a lot, and it really for me, it just opens your mind. And that's why I like a lot of these psychology books. If you see a lot of the things I post, a lot of it's psychology based, and it's a great read. It's a little bit dense. I'm not gonna lie. Like some of the other things I read um are not like as scientifically based. She has a very I mean, if any of you guys going through college, like the books that they kind of give to you with a lot of like it's got a lot of like studies and references, and it's a bit more dense. It's not as much like the pipe psychology route that I generally read. I'll just be straight up. This is more of like a real book. Like this shit has real studies, real evidence, and I'm honestly not doing it justice with the review. I've kind of just gave a brief overview of what I took from the book. It's a lot more dense, but as a guy, it'll really like kind of probably explain a lot of your early childhood and give you a lot of hope for the future. And as a woman, I mean, a lot of the girls I meet nowadays, and most of it's in the dating more realm, especially when I feel like there is this notion that like that you don't need a guy at all, and a woman can do everything a guy can do at this point, because theoretically they can, but there is biological aspects where there is a difference, and both sides are needed. Both sides have things to offer, and this book kind of explains it in a way that is great, all the science and all the theories about social conditioning, but there is parts where this shit is biological, and you need to um, give credence to that as well. So that's it. I mean, this is a pretty long book review, but I don't know. I like doing long videos. I mean, anybody who really takes the time to watch the whole thing, I really appreciate it. But until next time, if you like the content, please leave a comment in the comment box, like, subscribe, and until next time, peace.